Hello, thanks for tuning in and welcome to the pool party. I hope you can swim because we're definitely diving into the deep end with a huge splash of truth, facts, evidence, information, and proof. Swim. Say what you mean. It's talk about talking. How we listen, how we hear, how we speak, how we hear what we're listening to when we speak, how a listener hears what we're saying, if what we're saying, what they're actually hearing and or understanding. Is it clear? Swim. Say what you mean. Well, that's just the beginning of understanding, because after we get that understanding, how do we accept it? How we respond if it's not what we expect is paramount. Are you okay with the truth? Are you man, woman, human, or spiritual enough to accept the truth? Let's find out. Welcome to The Swimming Pool with your host, Travis Bridges.
And a pleasant good evening to you, and especially you. Thank you so much for tuning in on this beautiful Wednesday evening. I am your host, Travis Bridges, coming on your screen in 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I really do. Man, let's see. It's been a tough week for me. I don't know about you. And I had no intentions of coming on tonight because I had my guest, Can, and we were just going to rock and roll with it. But I thought to myself, why not just go on? What I was going to do, I had so many different plans. I set up my studio because I was going to surprise y'all. I was going to come on with my saxophone, and I was going to resurrect the COVID concert series. But no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to save that for you. So look out for a surprise. I'm just rewiring the studio so I will be ready. I came on Sunday morning, a special edition, and I went to bed, as I said when I came on, I went to bed real early because I just, we just had a long day. And I woke up like before day in the morning, and what was on my mind when I went to sleep was on my mind again. So I just kind of chilled there for a few minutes, and I said, okay, normally when this happens, I have to get up and write. And that's what I do. If you know me and you know some of my social media, I put all kinds of stuff on there, that I'm thinking and feeling, and you'd be amazed of all the stuff that I write. That's only the part that I want to expose. I have another, section of stuff that I just kind of hide just for me, and maybe my great-grandkids one day, they'll say, wow, my great-granddaddy was deep, and they'll be right, because I do write from my heart and soul. Anyway, I'm not going to be long in front of the camera right now because I have it's going to be long tonight. If you're not ready for a long one, then I don't want to say leave now, but I've got a classic coming up and it's going to be good. What I want you to do for me, please, is listen carefully, to me and my guest. I want you to listen carefully to what's being said, how it's being said. Pay attention to what could be, the motive as well as the energy of me and my guest. This conversation, I got a lot out of it, and the topic alone is just, incredible. It's entitled, I'll Tell You Later, and you'll get to find out exactly what that means. Hello to Kimberly and the other 4 people that are hanging out with me. I really appreciate it, but no need to worry, because my family and friends said, hey, what's wrong with you? You sounded like you were about to jump off the edge on Sunday. Well, have you ever had a day that was rough? The only difference between maybe you and me is that, I have a live stream and I come on, and, sometimes I can hide it, sometimes I can't. Hiding doesn't mean, being fake or phony. It's just, you put on your good stuff and you go out and do the best you can. I was just, okay with, expressing it. Most of the social media stuff anyway, the live stuff I see, people are all excited. They have on their best stuff. And some of these people, they wait till they get their hair done and their makeup done, and they come on as if it's just them. And I know some of these people, and I know they don't always look like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. You always want your bright side to shine. And that's what I said. But sometimes, you have to be okay with, not looking your best or being your best. And your best is your best, even if it's not your best. Do I need to say that again? Your best is your best, even if it's not your best. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take a short break. I'm going to come back. When I come back, I'm going to have my guest. It's going to be a long one, so hang in there with me, but you will definitely learn something from this one. I know you will. And remember, coming up soon, the next few weeks, I'm going to come back with my horn. Boy, I played a little bit, and it's like, when you put it down for a while, you can feel it. I had a few gigs over the past few weeks, but that ended, and I didn't practice as much. But that's okay. Don't worry about that. I'm going to be fine. So do me a favor. Hold the spot you got. I'll be right back, and don't move, okay? Thank you.
Your greatest strength. Challenges, adversity, and failure is where we find the greatest victories. Don't be discouraged by the look and feel of any loss, as our greatest strength is discovered in our worst weakness. People can judge you by what they see based on how they look at you. It's usually motivated by how they feel about themselves, and if it's negative, you'll never escape their thoughts. You can show them who you are by how you look at what's on the inside of you, which is motivated by how you feel about yourself. If it's positive, you are already free of their thoughts. An effective encounter with a mirror will always find truth. Time is not only money. Time is more change than money. Until we dig deep inside and face the true potential of ourselves, not even yourself can experience the truth of the fullness of your own destiny. The why of how we feel is the pathway to managing what we feel, and where we search to find it is the land of the free of who we find in ourselves. Repeat that 7 times. Don't be discouraged by the look and feel of any loss, as our greatest strength is discovered in our worst weakness. Hope activates faith. Dig deep and keep moving.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm doing good. On the decompressed side of a tense weekend, it was my anniversary. Very beautiful.
All right.
But
Congratulations.
I'm good today. Thank you.
Is right?
Yes. Cheers.
What'd you do?
I wanted to engage Mother Nature. Being inside so much, unless it was professional, I wanted to be out. So we visited a garden, beautiful garden in Palm Beach, and we took a drive up the Intercoastal and did some kind of private one-to-one things. So it was really nice, very nice.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So here we are.
Yes, finally.
Do you have an hour set aside?
I do. I pretty much show everybody what I have going on in the immediate. So I'm good to go.
Okay, so I take it you looked at some of the videos that I sent you.
I did take them in.
Okay, you have any questions at all?
No, I mean, you seem very straightforward in approach. It seems sometimes that the connection was, you were trying your best to make it happen, but sometimes it was a bit disjointed. So I just hope the conversation between us is smooth, nice and easy.
Okay, so you did, I guess, kind of get some of the highlights or some of the magic. I don't have a word for it. I'm calling it magic for lack of a better word. But, you know, you see certain things develop in conversations where things come around where, you know, after repeating certain things or after clearing what someone either says or thought they heard, or, you know, how it just happens. So you did get that. That's good.
Absolutely. And I'm paraphrasing. If I don't believe that I'm clear, or I don't really understand where you're driving the bus to, I will ask and I will clarify. So.
Okay. All right. So I guess we'll start the clock in just a few minutes. And here's the good, bad, and ugly thing about how I planned this interview in particular. When we first started, you know, I had some things I wanted to talk about, probably based on something you posted, and I really don't remember what they were. And I like the idea that we can just throw something in the air and it just happens and or develops. You know, I'm also prepared that if nothing happens, because sometimes when people are on the same page, you know, you don't get to have anything to clear up because, you know, not everybody is misunderstanding. Sometimes you have harmony.
And the heavens open. I
Yeah.
tell people all the time that many things are not conflictual. Just let it happen. If you agree, just let it be.
Right. So, I don't have any subject or topic, and we can just keep randomly talking, and, you know, something always comes up. Would you happen to have any questions about anything that you heard on my interviews on the other podcasts?
I think for me, it's just more, I would see this as a getting to know each other type situation. Clearly, you were intrigued by my post and my presentation. So it is a way for you to delve inside of, and I can in turn extract things from Travis. And I think the conversation was just so familiar. So just explore me, because you have the opportunity, and I'm granting you the free reign. I'll do it to everybody because I'm a very private person. But I want to see where this goes. I'm very interested.
I'm getting a little interruption with your phone. I don't know if you're on a speaker or what, but sometimes your voice goes in and out, and I don't know if it's clear. And that may happen to me. Let me know if it does. But your connection isn't clear. Some of the syllables are cutting off or something like that. I don't know how to describe it, but it doesn't sound like it's a solid connection.
So I'm going to take myself off speaker, and I'm directly in your ear right now.
Oh yeah, that'll always work. The speakerphone doesn't work as well when you're going through this. So did you do any other kind of investigation on who I am? Because, you know, I never mention anyone's name. Now you've got edit work for me because now I have to go back. You just mention your name, and that's fine. But I usually make sure that I don't post any names or I include any names in any of the interviews because I don't want anybody to be directly identified. Of course, if someone recognizes your voice, then so be it. But I like keeping that privacy because I want everyone to feel like they're the person that's talking, including me, because people kind of switch places. Some people will either agree or side with something or understand, or then someone may not understand like someone else. So there's something about names that just kind of not take away from it, but may just distract in some kind of way.
Okay, I'm fine with anonymity. I just wanted to ask, did the recording start already or it has not? Because I wasn't clear on that.
Well, no, as soon as this line is picked up, this line is always recorded. Anytime you see, I never record anyone without permission ever in life. I don't believe in that. I don't play that. But this is a line. I let people know if I'm talking. If I call you on this line, it's recording, whether or not we're going to start this part of the interview here or not, because we're just kind of, it's like an icebreaker. And I definitely want a full hour, and I will note when we start the topic, maybe when I feel a zing of magic. I really want to find a topic, because right now we're just kind of chopping it up, as they would say.
So we don't have anything on the table. But I guess I will start by asking you something. Do you understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it?
I understand that based on what resonates with you, that you're intrigued by certain people. And it feels like to me, it's the sense that I got that you desire to explore that even further. And you desire to capture that for other people to really be able to extract nuggets, jewels, wisdom, or whatever should come from it. I don't deem you as a person who just does things randomly. It seems like you're very structured, very analytical. So am I, very detailed. So you want people to benefit from this, but you only resonate with certain people, is how I'm perceiving it.
What would you, when you say certain people, can you be more specific? What do you mean?
It seems to me that you like people who are deep thinkers. You like individuals who take your perception on different aspects of life. It's not very straightforward, or it's not your normal routine, mundane type of thing. You like people who are risk takers and kind of shift to the other side of the spectrum and call a thing a thing. And I say that all the time. I love Jan Van Zant for that. But it seems like you just like that person who's not the status quo, monotonous type of person. And that's certainly me.
So what would be the opposing side to that? If you, the person you just described, what would be, what would be the opposite of that?
The person who goes along, the person who really does not take the time to decipher through life and understand things. They co-sign things very easily. They don't question anything. They just kind of follow the leader, and they'll never be the leader for that reason.
Okay. Well, I get a lot of feedback, and people think I'm mean and rude and disrespectful. And although I don't give two rat squats about someone's opinion, as much as I am concerned if they have a point. I don't want to come off as rude, mean, or disrespectful, but I do understand why people may say that. Based on my interviews that you were able to hear, do you detect any of that? Do you see me as being rude and disrespectful in any kind of way?
I saw you as being very persistent. Sometimes you can be a bit cynical in your presentation, but ultimately I feel like you want to get to the point you're driving for. Sometimes that causes us to be a little bit confrontational and pushy to a certain degree. Sometimes
there's a smile on my face. I don't mean to cut you off. Are you trying to be nice to me right now?
Not necessarily at all. I'm very honest.
I know. So here's my question. In what you heard, did you find me to be rude, inconsiderate, and disrespectful to any of my guests?
I could see where they could perceive it that way. From the outside listening in, I would personally say that it didn't come across to me in that way. It came across to me. Sometimes you just take it and drive it a certain way to get what you want out of it. My thing would be, for the feedback that you receive, you can be resistant to it if you'd like. But if it's something that's going to define you in a way and help you be a better person, I would hope you would at least be open to it, but that's your choice.
Which is why I am opening myself up right now to get your opinion. Maybe I should or maybe I shouldn't care, but I do, in the sense that if I can grow from it. If someone is just kind of butthurt over something and they're just mad, and they're just trying to cut me down, then, I don't pay too much attention to that. But I do analyze, as you said, everything people say, and I'm just trying to get something from you. Did you hear at any time where I was rude? I know it can be perceived that way because that's how I think it is. I know it's never my intention to be rude, disrespectful in any kind of way. But you personally, did you hear me being rude or disrespectful to any of my guests in any kind of way?
I can't say again that it translated over to me as being rude because it wasn't me in the position of the hot seat per se. What I can offer you is at the end of this interview, I will be painfully honest with you. So revisit that question at the end of this interview because it will be my personal experience that I'm not speaking subjectively. I'm speaking very directly from what I experienced with you. So ask me that question, if you will, at the end, and I can give you a straightforward answer.
So would it be safe to say your answer is a clear no? That you did not in any of my interviews hear me rude or disrespectful to anyone?
My perception of it is no.
Okay.
Cynical at times, pushy at times, but rude, no.
Okay. Pushy.
Mm-hmm.
How so? Because pushy.
You do a dance with your questions because you seem to want to narrow people down to a hard and fast. And it is my encouragement to remember that someone's perspective of something, their opinion of something, is not always hard and fast. It should be fluid because you want to allow the opportunity that if a person has missed something or perceived you wrong, that it affords you an opportunity to atone. So a perception or opinion, subjectiveness should never be considered a hard and fast. You don't even look for that. What you want to look for over time, if you are engaging yourself in establishing a rapport and a relationship, is that you can then advance to that place. But one interview, chance encounter, what we may or may not get, I think your expectations in that way are a bit much.
Are you specifically referring to my need for a yes or no in some of my questions and when I try to get an understanding? Would that be included?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because sometimes it's not as hard as fast as a yes or no. It really is not. Sometimes it's worthy of the expounded explanation for you to consider. And if you close your mind to just a yes or a no, which closes then the conversation, the exploration, I think you've done yourself and the other individual a huge disservice.
So do you get the impression that I have in any of those interviews closed myself off to an explanation?
I think you lead with what you expect or what you want, but it is indicative of anybody inside of a relational situation, interview situation, that there has to be some give and take built into that. So ultimately, where you're driving to go, if you remain open-minded, you might find yourself in another lane or another path that it was even better and greater than what you anticipated. But you have to be open to that.
So do you get the impression based on those interviews that I am not open to an explanation?
I think you're open to an explanation, but do you accept the explanation is very different. Or do you want the explanation to be what you're expecting to be, or you're just closed off after that if it's not? I can say that it would take more time and exposure interacting with you to get there, but that is a question mark for me. Ultimately, what are you trying to get to? And it is hard for the other person to really decipher or figure that out because you're not really articulating it. You're just kind of allowing what happens to happen.
So based on what you've heard and what you know, and no, I can go on record and say we don't know each other personally. We're just friends, and I appreciate you taking the time. I guess I'm going to start the clock now. We're 15 minutes in, and if we run, past the 15-minute mark, I will definitely let you go because I don't want to hold you. So I'll officially start the clock now in terms of the time. But I'm trying to get a specific indirect from you in what you've heard, and you don't know me outside of what you heard. Do you get the impression that I am not open to an explanation?
I get that you're open to explanation. I picked up that you're open to dialogue. But I'm really kind of in the middle if you're really receiving what the other person has said, internalizing that factoring that in? Or does your position or stance cause you to kind of shut down when the response is given or not really be able to receive it as intended? I've come to find, especially in my professional realm of service, that I've had to deny myself a lot of ways, my perspective, what I consider, and everything else, to really be able to hear an individual. I've had to take notes. I've had to go back and revisit things. It's just not cut and dry. And when a person is trying to articulate themselves, but they're not really able to give it to you in a way that they're feeling like you're receiving it, it causes them to shut down, or it'll cause them to become defensive. Everything that does not lead to good, genuine, and rich dialogue. So you're looking for a hard and fast answer from a person who's saying there has to be more exposure, more consideration, and everything else before I can answer that question directly. However, at the end of this interview, I can definitely give you an answer, hard and fast, for me.
I will definitely allow time for that for sure, and I would definitely make a note to ask you at the end. But I guess I'm doing what I try to practice, and I'm trying to get a yes or no from you. And if you don't have a yes or no, that's fine, because then I want to go and explain my persistency on, why yes or no's are important to me. So, is it safe for me to conclude that you don't see me as closed off to an explanation, or you do?
It is never safe to assume or conclude. What I'm going to say to you is you do not need me to co-sign either way. My position is my own, and I'm going to safeguard that. What I'd encourage you to do is just go ahead and explain your position. And that will allow me to digest what is inside your mind and heart and factor that into how I feel. But a yes or no right now, I'm not at liberty to give you that.
Okay. So then you are declining a yes or no on that particular question.
I'm neutral right now, but I'm open.
No, I guess I kind of want to hear you tell me I'm not going to answer that question, or I will not give you a yes or no to the specific question that I just asked.
And my perspective is I'm neutral, but I'm open. I don't have a yes and a no to give you right now.
Okay.
I'm open to what you have to say.
Well, I'm definitely going to say something, but I kind of want your perspective prior to. And you have, I'm trying to, what I think I'm hearing is a no. You're not going to answer that question. And if that's not what you're saying, then you can express that. I do hear that you're not sure, but I'm not necessarily asking you if you're sure. I just kind of want to know, I guess, outright, based on what you've been able to hear, do you feel that I'm closed-minded to explanations in the sense that we're discussing now? Do you feel like I'm closed-minded? And I'm looking for a yes or no, but if you either choose not to give me a yes or no, say I'm not going to answer yes or no, or just tell me yes or no. Do you feel that I am closed-minded to explanations?
At this point, I can say again that I don't personally know you. What I did was take in some of the interview material, not even all of it, a portion of it here and there from what you shared. And what I found is that you drive the bus to the destination that you desire. You're very persistent, which can be taken in a very negative way, or a person who's open-minded could say, I'm just going to go along with this and allow this to happen. I cannot, at this point, give you a yes or a no. It's not that do I want to or not. Authentically and professionally and personally and anything else not knowing you, I would never make that judgment call against you. What I'm going to do is allow you the opportunity through this interview to cement my mind and heart in that position. And at the end of the interview, I can give you a hard and a fast yes or no. That's as fair as I can play it right now.
At the end of the interview, I may not need to know, but as I said, I would ask you. What I'm asking now is for now. I know that you're saying that you cannot. And if you say you cannot, is that the same as you will not?
Cannot is that. I cannot. I'm not judgmental. I'm not biased. I don't have preconceived notions. So this is like a secular pattern of conversation. So I would prefer to move on and just engage in dialogue and just see where this takes us, because you're not going to commit me to a yes or a no. Right now, I'm neutral and I'm open.
Okay, and I've heard that for probably about 5 times now, so you don't have to explain that again. I just want to, before I move on, make sure that I have heard you clearly. So I heard you say you can.
And if you said, let's be honest here. If you said, I've heard this 5 times, maybe even more at this point, I co-sign that, and you understand where I'm going and what I'm saying, it doesn't make sense to continue to repeat the question.
Which is why
let's move on.
Which is why I'm making sure. And are you okay with me concluding that you have chosen? So I have to make my assessment of what I think you're saying. Okay, I've heard you clearly.
No, what you can do is accept what I'm saying.
Well,
I'm not giving you a yes or a no. I'm giving you, I'm neutral and I'm open. So if you accept that,
okay, you just
instead of pushing for what you want.
I just got what I needed. You just said you're not giving me a yes or no, and that's all I needed to hear.
I've said that several times.
I missed it, and I'm glad you were patient with me for me to get it that time. So thank you for that. I just heard you say, I am not giving you a yes or no, and that's the first time I heard it. And maybe you did say it, and that's why I like recording, because I can go back.
I can't. If you want to play semantic with words, that's fine. I said I cannot. I explained to you why. I'm not judgmental. I'm not biased. I'm not any of that. So why push for a person to be something that she is not? Because you're asking me for my perception and my opinion and a judgment of you that I'm not in a position to give, and I will not do that. At this point, let me make it very clear. I will not do that.
I heard you now. You don't have to repeat it. I definitely heard you. But, on that note, since it is in your, based on your intelligence, if I could use that word for lack of a better word, can and will are two.
Intelligence is fine. It definitely applies here. You can use that.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to be careful. I have a great deal of respect for you, for several reasons, and I understand conversations can get, frustrating. But I just heard you say something, and I want to be clear with something else. When you said you cannot, I heard you, but can and will are 2 different things. Do you agree that they're different?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll agree with that.
So when you said I cannot, and I wanted clarity is, in whether or not you can or you choose not to, because I may be able to give you $50, but if I can't give you $50, it's different. So maybe that wasn't the best analogy. So when I heard you say I cannot, I just wanted that extra clarity for whether or not you could not, or you're just choosing not to. And you were clear with me by saying you were not going to answer me, and that's when I got it. So now I'm good. So now I'm going to move on, if you're okay with moving on from that.
Okay. If you allow me just to clarify a point, because in saying I cannot, I afforded you an explanation for why I could not. Not that I wasn't willing. I said at the end of this interview, if we have positioned ourselves for me to be very clear on a yes or a no, I would. I said right now, I'm not in a position to, and I explained why, and I'm very fine with moving on from there.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, now I want to express why yes or no's are important to me, and why it may seem that I'm closed off to explanations. In all of my interviews, including this one, when I asked you the question just now, you seem to want to explain why, but I wasn't asking you why yet. It's important for me to get an understanding of where you stand before I get an understanding of why you stand there. So when I'm interacting with someone, whether it's an interview or just someone that I like clarity, to the microscopic clarity. And I believe I may go overboard sometimes, and I'm okay with that. It's just the way I'm wired, and maybe I can get therapy one day. But right now, I like to make sure that I'm sure. And I think it just derives from my childhood. I did like a study of myself, and some traumas in my childhood just caused me to always want to be heard and never misunderstood, and I always need to understand and not be confused when someone is saying something. I like to nail people down to exactly what they're saying instead of trying to figure out what they mean. So if I'm interacting with someone like I was just with you, and I was asking you a question, and instead of getting a specific and direct answer, you seemed to be pushing the why you were not. But I wasn't concerned at that moment as to why. And it goes for any other interaction that I have, particularly the interviews, that whenever I'm asking someone a question and instead of them answering the question right then, they give me an explanation, it kind of confuses me. And if there's something I can learn from, this conversation or any other conversation that can help me to be okay with what someone could possibly mean instead of what they definitely are saying and mean, then I would like to, I welcome that, in my growth, but I feel good knowing where you stand before you try to convince me of why you stand there. So whenever I'm trying to figure out something or trying to particularly get to the bottom of something, I think this applies best during conflict or chaos. When two people are not on the same page, you have to go to what I call a point of reference, or what I call a universal principle, so that you can eliminate any misunderstandings, because points of references and universal principles, they do not change. Our meaning can change, our thoughts can change, our feelings always change, but a universal principle and a point of reference is definitely more rock solid. So when I am gunning for a yes or no, I'm trying to eliminate any possible misunderstanding for me, because as I said, I don't want to misunderstand, and I don't want anyone else to misunderstand me. So when it
Can I interject for a moment, because you're saying a lot, but I need to be able to benchmark this and respond to you without it becoming convoluted. Is that okay for me to interject right now?
Anytime I go long, please feel free to interrupt. And if I can't, then I'll say just hold on a second, because I have a tendency of doing that. So
I appreciate that,
yeah, no problem.
And I will do the same as well.
Please.
So first of all, within your response here, or your presentation, I've heard you say me at least 10 times, 10 plus. Mm-hmm. And you can go back and count and establish that.
I take your word.
But one thing I'd like to emphasize with you is that dialogue or conversation is not one-sided. So you are really, really a person who pushes from your perspective. And I love, as a mental health therapist that I am, that you infused past traumas, childhood rearings, and everything that's wired you to be this particular way. However, being one-sided in presentation, thought, and driving for what you want in particular does not lend to dialogue. When you ask closed-ended questions that typically do not lend to a person expounding on how they feel, why they feel that way, or giving you the opportunity to really hear them, that's not a conversation. That's a questionnaire. That's a seeking answers, and that be that, and I'll figure it out how I desire and put it in perspective how I desire. That is so one-sided, and you are going to have a lot of people run from the conversation with you because of that. I can also share with you that life is not black and white, unfortunately. I wish it was, because it would neutralize a lot of problems. But there's a gray area. And if you choose to ignore the gray area, you're ignoring people, processes, and a lot of different things that can help well round you as an individual, professional, whatever it is that you do. So whenever you engage a conversation or interview or anything else, I would strongly encourage you to factor in that it's not one-sided. It's not one-dimensional. This is a dialogue that encompasses two or however many people, and I need to be open to them as well.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I'm going to try to recall what you said when you made reference that I mentioned me and I. I did because I was referencing myself. And that's why I talk about universal principles. And I don't like the idea, although I said it. So this gives me an opportunity to clarify. When I say me and my, and even I'm trying to make sure that I line up with what is established as either a universal principle or a point of reference. I don't want to take credit for what is universal. So when I say I do mean I, but if there's anything that I'm saying I in regards to that you don't see or you don't deem or agree with, that is considered universal, because I don't want to have an I or a my. For the sake of having a conversation, I'm saying I and my, and maybe I need to work on that. When I'm speaking, I'm trying to remove myself out of it. And again, it may be contradictory because you're hearing me say I and my, but I really don't want my personal opinion to be factored in, a subject or a topic. So you were correct that I was using I and my, but if anything I'm using I and my in regards to, you don't see as universal, that's where we can have a conversation, because my personal opinion cannot line up with what is considered standard or considered universal or considered a point of reference. As it relates to, I'm sorry.
So I want to expound on that a little bit and say innately we're wired a particular way, personality and everything else. We're born with a lot of these genetic imprints. But one thing is for sure, there is not one conversation you or I are ever going to have that we can disconnect from who we are. We are that individual person. We are our teachings. We are our experiences. We are our cultural lenses. We're a combination of many things. So we're never going to be able to disconnect or separate. I don't even think that's logical. What we can do is try to put that at bay and really hear the other person. That's why I encourage some people inside of dialogue. I tell them all the time, you are not listening to understand. You are over here cycling in your mind what you're going to say, how you're going to respond, what are you going to do, how you're going to defend. And that is not the way to have a conversation. Even if you have to sit there and take notes about points of consideration that you want to go back to, by all means do that, but be respectful and considerate to the other person that you're talking to. Because for as much as I heard you say you and I'm over here saying me. I'm over here giving myself just as much of a platform and reason to dialogue as you're giving yourself. And you say points of reference and all these wonderful pleasantries, but I say spirituality. There's a lot of different things embedded into conversations with other people. So sometimes a person who's one-dimensional in approach probably would do better with having a conversation with people who think like him or her, who act like him or her, who's not going to push the boundary. So they're probably just going to co-sign everything you say and you go along and you'll be fine. But if you're going to have a conversation with somebody who puts as much emphasis on what they want out of a conversation as you're probably going to end up having conflict more than anything else inside of that.
Well, I'm okay with that. Hopefully some of the conflict will last through at least a conversation. You mentioned life being, black and white. You said it's not black and white. What do you mean by it?
It's not. Because when you look for a definitive answer to everything, when you want to try and,
can I stop you for a
yourself,
second? I just thought of something.
Sure.
Okay. Before we go on, I definitely want to address black and white, and I did take notes while you were talking because I didn't want to lose and I was listening. But I just want to,
I'm going to table black and white because I definitely want to go back to that.
Definitely.
Go ahead.
Okay, when you were talking about listening, and then you just made some mention towards a person who's one-dimensional, I would just like to speak for myself, and in regards to this, I always listen to people. I would not have invited you into a conversation if I didn't want to hear what you had to say. I think when we reach a point of conflict of any kind, it's important to know where someone stands. So even though you are explaining yourself, or I may have to listen to you, or you may have to listen to me, we may have to listen to each other. When you know what you're building on, it just helps. So whenever I'm listening to someone and they're explaining something like, in a conversation, and I need to stop to find out where you're coming from, and I'll say, wait, hold on a second. Are you saying this? It's not because I'm not listening. It's because I'm trying to make sure I'm hearing what they're saying and not what they're meaning. And I differentiate, I separate, I know you can't separate who you are, from life, I guess, because, we all have our experiences. But the key point in what I'm trying to do here is differentiate, I have a problem pronouncing that word, between what someone is saying and what they're meaning. And I don't want to get caught up in that crossfire. So when I stop to ask a yes or no, someone may try to explain what they mean, and I have a fine line between what someone is actually saying. So I get that about, people not listening to each other and being one-dimensional, and where I may even come off as, not listening. But I'm trying to separate in my brain, what someone is actually saying out of their mouth and what they could possibly be meaning. And now we can go back to...
If I can, let me interject here, because I'm going to make a parallel that I hope is very deeply internalized on your behalf. When you interrupted me just now, you had asked me a question about black and white and the gray area that I said exists. So you interrupted and you took this conversation in a totally different direction. That speaks to me, whether you intended to or not, that you weren't listening to me. You didn't even allow me to completely articulate my thoughts. What you did was go into the direction where you wanted to go without even giving me just consideration, because effective communication has three key components. Something is spoken. It is heard by the other individual. And understanding is achieved. And the only way you're going to do that is you have to have dialogue about what was spoken, what you understood. Is it what was intended? And has the understanding been achieved? I know a lot of people who interrupt during conversation, especially when the other person is speaking, because they want to get their point across. They have to interject. They don't want to lose their thought or the intensity of the moment. But that is disrespectful. It throws people off. It causes them to lose their train of thought. It deflects from the moment, and it reduces the moment. So I pray that you internalize what I just said, because you just did it.
I realize that, which is why I ask, may I interrupt? Me being, I guess, what would be, officially the facilitator of this conversation, sometimes I may need to interrupt. It's no disrespect to you personally. And if I ever start to interrupt and you need to keep your train of thought, then just say, hey, no, not now. And I will respect that. I did not mean. Well,
I can personally say to you, having this conversation, you may not have intended for it to be disrespectful, but it came across as disrespectful. But I'm never going to be the person who does what she dislikes. So if I dislike what I perceive as you being disrespectful, I'm not going to do it to you in return. And please don't have that expectation of other people. It would have been very easy for you to take your note, maintain your thought, and then once I finished, go in that direction. So you would have to ask yourself, why are you not willing? I facilitate many conversations, moderate, I counsel, and I have to sit there if I'm really invested in this conversation and exchange and allow the person to articulate themselves. That is hugely important. That's important for any individual to want to even sit down to the table with me or have dialogue with me. So you have so many hard and fast considerations and rules for why you do what you do. But I say go back to intention. And I have to ask you today to strongly consider, what are you trying to accomplish? Because if your approach leads to controversy and conflict and people not wanting to sit at the table with you, what are you truly accomplishing?
That's not the case. Sometimes a conversation, a topic will lead to controversy and conflict, but the conversation usually doesn't. And there's a topic, someone may feel strongly about a topic, and that can turn chaotic really quick. But my conversations are usually peaceful. And I understand not everybody's going to understand and not everybody's going to like it. And I'm okay with that.
What resonated with you out of what I just said? Because I'm taking things that you're giving on the opposite side, and I'm strongly trying to consider it while developing a sound opinion or viewpoint of you. I would love to hear how you're receiving what I'm saying to you in return. Paraphrase for me what you took out of what I just said, if you will.
I think you were trying to say how important it is to listen to someone and not interrupt. I know that. It's kind of tough to do that sometimes. And I guess I will agree with you in terms of that not being black and white. I understand how important it is to listen completely through what someone is saying. And I will go on record and apologize for even asking to interrupt and interrupting you. However, there are some times, me personally, and if you need to interrupt me, I'll understand that maybe you're missing something, because this is what I would not want to happen, for me to talk for, 3 days and then you have no clue of what I'm saying. If I'm in the middle of saying something, even if I'm trying to make a point and you're not getting something, no, I don't want to be interrupted. No one wants to be interrupted. But I would rather you interrupt me if you misunderstand something I'm saying or if you're not clear with what I'm saying. So when you said something, and I interrupted, it was because I wanted clarity on what you may have been saying. So I understand that. And anytime I interrupt...
Well, if I can interject here so we don't lose where we're at right now, I would have to say you didn't interrupt for clarification. You interrupted and took this conversation in another direction.
Well,
we haven't even discussed black and white and gray, which was your initial question. So it was interruption, respectfully, it was not for clarification. It was to take this where you wanted it to go. And if that's your position, that is it, because this is your platform and you are conducting the interview. But it takes me back to making a firm decision and being able to answer your question definitively about you. I give you all due respect for apologizing, and I accept your apology. But a apology that continues to happen is because there is no change behavior. And if you continue to say, well, I accept this is how I am, this is just what I do, this is how I'm wired, there is no room for positive change, because you've accepted what other people perceive sometimes as being very dysfunctional.
Well, when I apologize to you, I'm not apologizing. And when I say I'm wired a certain way, I'm not making excuses. I am 100% open to change. I promise you, to actually hear your tone right now towards me is not really, what it's not fun, because I'm hearing, I'm hearing you tell me kind of sort of about myself, and the idea that I stepped up to this, I asked for this, I'm creating this myself. So I am 100% open to change, but for me to say, okay, this is how I am, it's just acknowledging, okay, my personality. It's not necessarily who I am, it's just my personality. So when I say that, I'm not making excuses for myself. I want to go on record and say I am 100% open to being a better communicator, which is why I'm stepping into this heat and this fire. I know that you were not, going to be easy on me, or you were going to be brutally honest as you have been, and I'm grateful for it. And again, I have to be honest with you. What I'm feeling right now in my energy and my spirit is not a good feeling, but that's when you grow, when you have resistance like that. So although I'm hearing you, for lack of a better word, you might be busting my chops a little bit. Part of me wants to rise up, but I have to be respectful of what you're saying. And I am hearing you. And trust me, I would not be asking you to interview or anyone else if I wasn't open to change and to grow. I may not get it myself on the first conversation. And as far as we not addressing black and white, we still have about a half hour to go, and we can still do it, and we can schedule another one if need be. I think it's the cost of communication when you either force yourself to listen or you even can't help yourself from interrupting. Sometimes we get lost if we can't keep our train of thought for whatever reason. And I look at it as, okay, it's just, you have to be okay sometimes. If you interrupt me, or if you let me go for a long period of time and I miss, half of what you're saying because I'm stuck on not interrupting, it's just the cost of the conversation. And sometimes we're going to forget stuff and we're not going to be able to stay, on track. I lose my train of thought often in conversations. So it's
May I interject?
Sure.
We don't have to accept our deficiencies and weaknesses. We build upon them. So if you know that you're a person or individual who gets sidetracked during conversation,
but I don't
understanding that the goal.
I didn't say that. That's
okay.
not what I'm saying.
Understanding the goal is to accomplish something meaningful. I will again reiterate, you can pull out your phone or any type of medium and take quick notes. But I would never, and I'm going to emphasize this greatly, I will never co-sign interrupting people in conversation, especially when they're passionate about what they desire to say, or they're really trying to get you to understand when they're coming from. It is very exhaustive to develop all of this in your mind and lay out a path of where you want to go and respond, and repeatedly, if that be the case, or intermittently have someone constantly interrupt that conversation and take it where they want to go. Both parties need to take responsibility inside of the conversation. Whether you do it frequently or infrequently, it is a skill set that you can develop if you so desire, and it's very important. And going back to black and white and gray, if I may, it is very important. It is very important that we all consider that even policy and procedures, laws, anything that you encounter in this life, there's always a gray area. What is written is not sound fact. A lot of what is written and published in books and everything else and what we've been taught is the subjective perspective of another individual who's innately human just like us. So can we rest solely on that? The only thing I rest solely on this earth is the Bible. That's the only thing I rest solely on. Because God's word does not move. It does not change. Anything else is subjective. You may read something in this book or get something from this place, and you can go right around the corner and someone will undo it or they have undone it. So we have to be open to the gray areas to reduce conflict. You can't even get past legal law. There are laws in place and they dictate certain things. But a unique situation happens has caused laws to be effectively changed because what is written in stone is no longer applicable. And you only get there if you're agreeable with some gray area inside of things.
I'm not at all contesting that there are gray areas, but you said something very important. You said that the only thing that you stand firm on is the Bible, and you said that was God's word, and that's what. So, is it safe to say that you're saying that is universal, that is concrete, what your perception of the Bible and it being God's word, that is something that's not black and white, that is considered universal and a point of reference for you? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Very clearly, what I'm saying regarding the Bible is this. It is my belief in the Bible and God's words. We have atheists. We have all different kinds of beliefs. My belief is firmly rooted in the Bible, and I believe that is our guiding compass. And it's what I rest on with all of the variances and moral aptitude and values and different ways that people think and move on this earth. We have to have something that is a guiding compass for us that brings us back to an appropriate and proper place. That's even for people interaction. God did not orchestrate us to be defensive and to be pushing our own agendas. God is love. God is people interaction. God is peace. He's everything but that. But because we feel like we are able to do things a particular way and say them a particular way, sometimes we lose focus on really caring about people. So the Bible is my belief. Christianity is my belief, and it is my core compass. Do people have other options and other religions and everything else? Absolutely they do. But the Bible is that for me. I'm speaking for.
Well, I would like to clear something. I definitely agree that areas are gray, that there are gray areas. I'm not contesting that in any way. There are gray areas. But again, you just said something that, is important. Your point of reference and or your universal principle is based on the Bible and what you consider is God's word. So when I talk about black and white, or let your yes be yes and your no be no, and not being lukewarm, either being hot or cold, that's what I mean when I am looking for a yes or no, and I'm looking for a point of reference or a universal principle. So you're kind of saying, in a sense, what I'm meaning. It's just kind of not coming out at the same time. So if that's your foundation.
If I may interject, I would have to beg to differ with that. Because your conversation, the initial question was about you. It was not about a guiding principle. It was not about the Bible. It was not about societal issues or any of that. It was about you as a person.
Okay, hold on.
And that is that's very different.
That. Please allow me, please. When I went back to try to clear that, when I said, I know I was talking about me, I, and my, but what I was trying to line up with was universal principles. And I am going to apologize again for saying I, me, and I. I thought I could do that in the conversation, and I'm okay to try to remember not to use me, I, and my. But I was saying me, I, and my because I believe that I do line up with universal principles. When I speak, I try to remove my personal feelings or beliefs or thoughts, feelings or emotions at all, from especially confusion or chaos or disagreements, and I try to go to what I call a universal principle. And that could be, established from different places, but, we have to agree on them before we can even have a conversation. So wherever you get yours from, or where anyone gets theirs from, it needs to be agreeable before we can even have a conversation. So what I'm saying is I'm not contesting that there are gray areas in life, but you are either one way or not. You're either for world peace or you're not. Yes, there are gray areas in there, but once again, when I'm trying to understand the person, I like to know where they stand before they try to explain why. So again, I'm not contesting that there are gray areas, but I think that life may be a little more black and or white than gray.
And I have to say that is fine for your perspective, and I'm never going to take that from you. But that we have to agree, absolutely not. We can respectfully agree to disagree. We don't have to agree to have dialogue. And actually, I prefer most often that be the case because I'm able to learn something. But you have to be true to yourself. And
right,
gravitating
but I don't want you to
universal.
take what I'm saying out of context. I'm not saying we have to agree.
I'm not taking it out of. I'm not taking it out of context. I'm very clear.
Okay, what I'm.
But
okay.
you really have to be true to yourself. Guiding principles, universal principles, where we don't all dwell in the universe. That's a safe place. That allows you to avoid instead of confront. That allows you to deflect instead of being true. I say it again, and I really mean it from the bottom of my heart, and I hope you take this to heart. You cannot separate yourself from who you are. Throughout this entire conversation, you have referenced yourself repeatedly, respecting who you are and how you feel. You have not left that out of this conversation. It has been a huge part of this conversation. So yes, sometimes we must agree to disagree. Be true to yourself and who you are, but inside of the process of that, be respectful and considerate to other people who have the right to do the same.
I, at no time ever in life, want to seem, or am I awareingly being inconsiderate of anyone for any reason. When I talk,
if you're getting the feedback that you are, it has to be a point of consideration. If the majority of the feedback that you're getting is advising you that you're coming across
it's
that
not.
way,
The majority is not. I promise you, it's not.
if you get some, because what I've noticed is that we love cheerleaders, and I just spoke about this. We love individuals who are like, yes, you're great. Oh, that was awesome and everything else. But the individual who's over here was like, not so much. There's some things that you can fine tune here. How do you consider this and what do you consider that? Many people become very defensive because they don't want to hear that. They don't want to factor that into their presentation. But you said it earlier, that's where our growth and development comes from. So the cheerleading section can stay quiet in life. I want the person who's going to give me the truth, who's going to show up authentically, who's going to give me a good word that'll help me be a better person so I can internalize that and do the work that I need to do. No, it's not okay if I'm offending people. No, it's not okay if I'm repelling people. No, it's not okay if people do not want to listen to the good word that I have to say because of my presentation. What it is indicative of is that I need to make some changes.
Are you making changes?
All the time.
Well,
all the time.
As I was saying to you, I would not have invited you in particular if I didn't want the truth. I do not know you, and I'm only basing what I've known on the short conversation we had prior to this interview and what I look at on your posts. So I didn't think that you would cheerlead me towards anything. And I promise you, anyone that's agreeing with me, I don't have to co-sign or have to get any kind of accolades from them. But I am concerned about someone. I want to know if someone disagrees with something that I find concrete. Those are the conversations that I want to have, not to try to prove myself right. And if anyone has proven something that my perspective adds wrong, not to opinionate it, not to say I feel it's wrong or I believe it's wrong or I think it's wrong. But if someone has proven a stance that I have taken, that I have considered as a point of reference or as universal, those are the conversations that I want to have. And that is part of the reason.
That's amazing, because it lends to the question that you asked me initially, and it was my perspective of you. You asked for that. And this lends to this. And if you're telling me inside of the question that you have come across as being no fault of your own, rude, abrasive, or whatever the case is concerned, now, even during this conversation, you either solidify that or you undo it at the end when you ask me this question again. And if my answer aligns with what you've gotten in the past, then what are you going to do with it? Are we going to continue to have the conversations and act and react the same way, or are we going to make positive changes? What are you going to do with that information?
Well,
I'm curious.
I am aware that my tone and my communication style, as you even agreed, can be perceived as those things you just mentioned, rude and disrespectful.
Absolutely.
I'm aware that they can be perceived that way. My question was, am I? I understand that if I have been rude to you or to anyone else, I am going to officially apologize, because again, it's not my intention. I am aware that
and my question, if you would allow me to have a counter one, is what are you going to do with the feedback that you're soliciting? That is my question.
I am doing.
Can you give me a hard and fast on that?
I will.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I will. I will continue.
Okay.
I will continue to get feedback from people that may have that perception of my communication style. Right now, again, if I was basing on how I was feeling, I would just hang up the phone and just hold my head down, because nothing you have said has been
likewise.
Nothing that you have said has been a cheerleader factor to me, but I'm not discouraged at what you're saying. Fortunately, I mean, as I said, I walked into this, and what I am going to do is what I've been doing. I've been investigating myself and, trying to be self-improving, because I understand that my personality, and I'm not making an excuse, I know that I can be perceived as rude, because I'm telling you right now, in your face on this phone, I want to know what I want to know, and I want to understand what I want to understand, and I won't bite my tongue to ask you, what are you saying, if you're trying to explain something to me. So I'm not trying to get what
and I encounter, if I may respectfully, in return, once I speak my truth, you cannot make me say what you want to hear or make me package it up even differently. So what I want to know what I want to know, and I want to say what I want to say. And we both have to be respectful of that. You can't be one-sided, and you cannot make anybody say or do anything that they do not desire to do. And I believe once you accept that, things will be so much easier. There won't be so much pressure. I can just listen without this constant circular pattern of trying to get a person to do what I want them to do. That's a control factor. That is a serious control factor.
You are correct. That is a control factor. And once again, I would like to defend myself that I would never try to force anyone to say what I want them to say. However, if I am not understanding what they are explaining, and I try to get them to make it clear for me, I'm not trying to make them say anything. I will always accept your answer or anyone's answer if it's clear and direct. But what I find myself getting...
if it's clear and direct. Let me ask you this. I'm going to encourage you to do this. Go back and listen, and I'm sure you will, at the very beginning of this conversation. I couldn't have explained my neutral and open position any better than I did. You were not open to receive it, and you kept driving for what you wanted. Go back and listen to yourself, please.
I will.
You were not receptive to what I had to say. And I'll say, for as good as this conversation was, because we need to have the difficult conversations. If understanding is going to be achieved, if a conflict-free society is going to be achieved, if solutions are going to be unearthed and unveiled inside of our communication, it cannot be one-sided. You cannot push for what you want, because what you want is not what I'm willing to give you. I'm willing to give you my authentic truth and my perception of a situation, which is subjective. And it makes it very difficult to step outside of conflict in that regard.
As it relates to the beginning of the conversation, I accepted every time you gave me an explanation. What I was looking for was an answer. And I continued to ask you for an answer, but what I got was an explanation. Once you told me... My explanation, oh my God, my explanation was my answer. That you were unwilling to receive it the way that I presented it, you cannot control another person and tell them how to package it up how you want it. That is
my
not...
explanation...
Hold on a second, please.
My explanation was indeed my answer.
Okay.
It definitely was.
Okay, I get that. Okay.
Okay, good.
Your explanation was your answer, but your explanation was definitely not the answer to the question that I asked you.
Because I was not going to answer the question that you posed
when
directly.
You made that
I
clear,
gave you neutral and open, and it was up to you to receive that or not, and you did not receive that.
Once you told me no, I did receive it well. But I didn't hear a yes or no. I heard, as you call it, your response, your answer.
So you know what I cleverly did inside of that, and you can go back to listen to this as well. I stayed in the same vein. I said, no, I cannot, the same as I said, I will not refuse
Well,
to
no, you did not.
give you a.
You didn't say you will not until I clarified. You said
I said this was cleverly played because I never changed my position.
I didn't
You're
say
missing
you
it.
changed. I may be missing it.
Okay, so
Okay.
if I stayed in the same vein and I gave you what you needed for us to move the conversation forward, that is strategy. I
Okay.
still stayed in my position, and I'm still staying in it now. But if you ask me that question right now, I can give you a definitive
I refuse
yes or
to
no.
answer your question because
I'm
I have enough.
sure you would. If you asked it right now, from my personal
But I'm
experience,
I'm
I
not
can give you a
asking.
definitive
But I'm not
answer.
asking.
Well, I'm saying to you right now, based on engaging you for this period of time, absolutely yes. You do come across as being rude. You do come across as being pushy. You do come across as being abrasive, and there is no balance inside of your presentation. Period. You want what you want, and it causes you to steamroll over other people, and that is completely not acceptable. And I encourage you to continue the process inside of developing and changing. I do.
Well, I appreciate that. I respect it. And I thank you for it.
You're welcome.
I noticed, again, that you were consistent in your response. And whether it was cleverly planned or not, that's between you and whatever you were setting up. I will go back and listen to, the conversation. And again, I don't expect to be right in anything. I am 100% sure because I don't know the effects of this conversation. I will have to listen back to it, and that's why I ask you for it. I don't know what I'm going to get, but I am confident that whatever I get will be for my good. And again, I didn't ask your opinion at this time, but I appreciate you insisting that you give it to me. And I'm okay with that.
And respectfully, I interject here to say that's some of the give and take. Because you agreed. I want you to also go back and listen to this. Not necessarily when you were going to ask the question, but you were going to ask the question. So when I posed it, you were resistant to it. You could have gone along and said, absolutely. You got to ask yourself, why was I not receptive to her then? Why couldn't I give her something as she has listened to me, devoted her time to me, and given to me? You've got to question. Please question. Hold on for a minute. I'm asking you to please question your intention about things.
I can. I can do that. When I ask you what I ask you at the time I ask you, that's when I wanted to know about that scenario. Everything else, I knew that the dynamics of our conversation would change from the time we started talking till the end. I wasn't trying to get your opinion after you've had an opportunity to analyze our conversation. I wanted your opinion based on what you...
When you interrupted me respectfully, I went with it. I didn't say, no, I was talking. No, I have a thought process. No, I need to get out what I wanted to say. I went with you. And I infused my answer to black, white, and gray later. And we had a good conversation about it. There has to be some fluidity. There has to be some adaptability. There has to be some consideration from the other side. And I am emphasizing that for the opportunity that God has given me to speak with you. I could have really pushed my position because it was my moment to speak. I went with it. You can do the same if you so desire. It does not always have to be about you.
Well, thank you for that. I am pretty much, I'm aware that nothing has to be about me. And I don't think anything...
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Because we all deserve a form of self-actualization. We all thrive on positivity and encouragement and everything else. But once again, there has to be a balance. It cannot be one-sided if you want to avoid conflict. And I can say with you coming across as a very intelligent and composed man, that you are doing yourself a huge disservice for the people who would listen to you and glean from your wisdom and everything else you have to offer simply because they can't get past your presentation. Huge disservice, because you clearly have a lot to give in a positive way.
Well, that means more to me than how someone will choose to perceive it. Because if I'm coming across in a positive way and you suggest that I am an intelligent man, how I present it can and will be worked on. That's why I'm having these conversations, because I do want to be, I guess, a little more appeasing to people that may not like it or may not.
A little bit more appeasing. Oh, God, I have to address that. That is very cynical. I don't need you to be a little bit more appeasing. I don't encourage you to be a little bit more appeasing.
Well,
I encourage you to be a little bit. I encourage you to be a lot of bit, and that's not a word, but a lot of bit more honest with yourself.
No, it's a word, and I get it. Well, you just said,
no, it's not a word. I just threw that together. But appeasing is cynical in that the context you just used it. So I'm gonna delete that completely.
Okay, that's fine. You just made a clear, concrete, and that's why I like solid yes or no's, and I like what is instead of what is.
You got me there. There is no question about it.
I didn't get you.
Very clear and straightforward.
I didn't get you.
And thank you for getting me there. And I applaud myself for allowing you the opportunity to get me there, because I didn't prejudge you.
Well,
I did not have any biases or preconceived notions against you. I allowed my experience to dictate what I determined about you from today. Now, are you able to change that at some point? Sure, if you're willing to. Do you care about changing it? You may or may not. But it's the perception that I walk away from you with. And you cannot tell me that it does not matter, because it does.
Well, I am willing, and I will make adjustments on my presentation with everyone. Everyone doesn't feel the same. No one's going to view me the same every time. But you just said
I can probably safely say you don't interact with everybody the same way. The way I interact with my husband and children is not the way that I interact with society. We interact with people differently for different reasons. But there has to be a standard mode of operation. And we're always out in the universe under general principles. It is not reducing us to a clear path that you emphasize of how to conduct ourselves.
What do you mean?
There has to be some variance. Say it again?
What do you mean we're all out in the universe as with principles? What do you mean?
You have referenced universal principles, generalities, and all of that. And I say these are umbrellas. These are catch-alls. These are something that individuals who have come up with that have been maybe cemented on this side and undone on the other side.
Maybe.
So ultimately, I have to learn who I am as an individual. I have to really define how I'm wired and how I think. I have to understand that I come with weaknesses. I don't like that word, but I come with things that could be done better, and I come with strength. But to understand, to capitalize on my strengths, I have to be willing to honor and be truthful about my areas of deficiency or weakness, and not only identify them, but do what you said you will do and seek to make them, transition them over into positives in some type of way. I don't just accept the areas of deficiency because I don't want to deal with them. And I have to be consistent. When you ask me about my developmental process every day, and it is my prayer, God, humble me. Let me walk in humility and grace and gratitude. Let me deny for the betterment of your people and for me to be able to be productive even as a mental health professional. It is tremendous sacrifice and denying of myself for the greater cause. Every day, all day.
Well,
even when I misstep, I atone for it. I don't leave it festering. I'm okay with apologizing. I'm okay with hearing your truth, even though it may not sit well with me. And inside of that, I figure out daily how I can be a better person, no matter what I'm doing and who I'm doing it with.
We are right on the nose of ending our time when we started the clock. Unless you have a few
Okay.
more minutes, I will go, but I would like to make some closing statements. And it's probably going to be much shorter than it would have been. But you made something that I'm going to walk away from, that I appreciate. And I'm thanking you now, for what you said. You made a statement about me, and you can call it a cheerleading form, but I just so happen to agree with you. You said that I have something to say. You detect that maybe from my other conversations. You also made a statement that, I'm an intelligent man. You said those things about me, and I'm grateful for those. You also said some things earlier that were not quite in the same vein as those. They were not as nice, but I took those the same way I'm taking this. I'm just using this
Very, very good.
as a closing statement, to try to make one of many closing points. If you are making these statements about me and my personality and maybe even my character, in that, I have something to say and I have a level of intelligence and I have something to offer. And then on the other side, you are saying that how it's presented or how someone may perceive it may, put a dent in that. I'm going to have to be okay with that. Not that I'm saying it's okay that, I may not come across to everybody the same way, because there are many people that I communicate with that don't see me as that way and can see through how I'm presenting something and get the meat and potatoes of what I'm saying as opposed to, the fat and dessert. So I appreciate.
I would interject just very softly and say these individuals probably know you better. We're coming from a conversation, and you asked me a hard and fast at the beginning of this conversation without me knowing you. That is completely unfair, and I stated it. The more somebody knows you,
I get that,
the
but
better
what
they can articulate that.
I understand that, which is why I said clearly, based on what you heard, I know that if you know someone better, you will have a different perspective, but I can't assume.
Thank you, Jesus.
Which is why I said, based on what you heard and what you know, I wanted your opinion based on that. You can always change it. You may change it again next week. I'm not looking for how it can change. I'm trying to look at, where you are today. What you said about me today, you may not say if you get to know me, and you may not have said.
Exactly.
So
exactly. But for today.
When I ask you, at the time I asked you, I knew what you were armed with. I know that you had not had a conversation with me for yourself, but I gave you what you asked for prior to us having a conversation for you to do as much analyzing as you can. It's just like, I'm going to let you read over this.
And I would have to say that sounds, to be honest, kind of selfish, because to be painfully honest with you, you contacted me. I wasn't expecting it. I decided over prayer to do this. But did I have an opportunity to sit there and completely digest all of it? Absolutely not. I told you from the bits and pieces that I was able to listen to.
That's
I was not able to advance to that
Those are
point.
the grounds that I would listen. I wasn't
No,
asking.
you wanted a hard and fast yes or no.
For the rest of my life.
Well, you can always ask that, but just please know and accept today that you will not always get that.
I don't
You
always
cannot
expect
control
it.
You cannot control another person. For this conversation, that's how you started out, and that's how I desire to end. It's simply this. There has to be balance in conversation. There has to be give and take. There has to be sacrifice. There are black and gray and white areas in life. And that's the only way you're going to get through life without a real problem. Because life is unfair. Life is not going to be consistent. People are going to change. Perspective means everything, where people co-sign, follow you, like you, support you. It is all relevant. If you choose to sidestep and ignore it, it is up to you, and we suffer the consequences. That's how life works. And that's what I'm leaving you with. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for the opportunity. And I pray that God blesses everything you do, even inside of your music. And I leave this conversation with no ill will whatsoever.
Good. I receive it.
All right. Take care.
Smooth jazz, top 40 R&B, inspirationals, and more. Top 40 R&B, inspirationals, live and more from the Hollywood Home Studio. Like, share, subscribe. And thanks for tuning in. And thanks for tuning in. SWYM. Swim. Say what you mean. As much as this information is designed to bring awareness to how we listen, hear, and process, it is also a form of therapy. The little person inside of all of us needs to be heard. As adults, even listening to ourselves is a form of healing, strengthening, and growth. It's okay to speak, talk, express yourself, and be heard, even if you're the only listener. If our testimony does anything at all for anyone else, that makes the continued effort worth the time. Get the words out. You'll feel better, and that's a promise. Thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate it.
You know, sometimes it seems like all the good times are gone. But you got to keep on searching. You got to keep on keeping on. Keep on keeping on. For example, take me standing right here today. I would not be here with you if I believed the things that the people say. You got to keep on searching. Keep on searching. Keep it on